Good morning, Deauville Diary Watchers. This morning I'm going to do a little video. What I've got is a leak on the rear cylinder rocker cover gasket. It's a common thing on these. What we've got to do basically, there's the rocker cover there. It's held on by two 10mm bolts there and there. I've taken the spark plug out the hole there. I've whipped the tank off. Obviously you guys are going to have fairing, which is a little bit more complicated. We can cover that another day. So yeah, basically it leaks along the back. Where this back end gets so hot, the front cylinder's air cooled. Obviously the back one is water. Well, it's all water cooled, but the back cylinder doesn't get as much cooling. Anyway, and you can see, let's get some light on the subject. You can see the wetness there. Anyway, I had a huge puddle of oil. That's all wet there. Look, it runs down, runs all the way down, drips on the floor. I had a big puddle in the shed. You know, it's not a deal breaker, is it? But it's just I don't like it. It's leaking oil. So yes, it goes around here. There you can see it's moist there even. So I'm just going to whip this cover off, give it a clean up with some petrol, the rubber seal. 9 times out of 10 there's no point in replacing, because you can get originals if you can find them, and you get OEM ones. Sorry, not OEM ones. You get aftermarket ones which are less than rubbish. They really are. It's a low quality rubber. The rubber shrinks over time, and you get the same problem again. It splits and cracks and falls apart, and they're absolutely not good with keeping a civil tongue on a Sunday. So what I'm going to do is whip this off, clean the gasket up with the seal up with petrol, and then I'm going to apply a good quality rubber sealant. I use this stuff, black RTV silicone gasket. It's oil resistant, etc. You know, it's a couple of quid. Simple job. So yeah, at the moment I'm just undoing all the screws around the air cleaner box. I'm just making life easier for myself to get into there. There you go, that's the last one. Magnetic part tray will keep all your bits nice and safe in. Ooh, got to undo these little clamps there. Oh, bloomers, hang on. Right, as if by magic the pipes have come off. So now this top lid can come off of there. There you go, put that to one side nice and safely out the way so you don't tread on it. There's the air cleaner, that just lifts out. Incidentally, this sits in a trough. You can see the lip on that. See that lip? That sits in there. And there should be, and there is, a rubber seal all the way around. Just make sure that yours is sat nicely, otherwise it's going to be letting air in from the wrong places and bypassing the filter. Now that looks absolutely spotty dog, doesn't it? Nothing wrong with that at all. Don't put that safe down there. Now basically we need to take this off. To get this off, we've got a pipe coming down there, you see, from the air cleaner, and this is bolted to the top of the carburetors. You're going to need a long Phillips screwdriver for such purpose. Oh look, here's one I made earlier. There's the first little screw. There. So I'll wind that back off. 10 or 12 circulations. Right. Where's the front cylinder one? If I'm not mistaken, that's it there. Yes, it is. Right, we'll wind that off a good few turns. As you can see, I've already removed this clip here, which goes down to your air valve. Right, so that now this should just, I've got an 8mm nut there to do. There's always something in there, just a sec. Oh look, it's disappeared. Now, she will pop off of there. All the pipes are undone. Again, put that to one side safely, out the way so you don't tread on it and break it. Now we have access to this rocker cover. There we go. Quick tip on the rocker cover is when you remove the two 10mm bolts and you lift this away, inside there is a pipe coming up, and it comes up to this. There's actually a valve in there, and this is where the air travels between the front cylinder and the rear cylinder. The hot gases coming up through. You can see the pipe somewhere. There it is. There's the pipe there. Comes along, goes into your valve, and then into this cylinder. So anyway, underneath there is an O-ring. And sometimes you can literally lift this off, and then the O-ring will drop down into one of the galleys in there, and it's an absolute pig. So yeah, quick tip there. Right, let's whip these two 10mm off and take the rocker cover off. Just a second. When you do these back up, they are a set bolt. You can't just keep tightening them, so do not force once you get tight. Let's get my spinner on there. 10mm spinner, godsend of a tool. Absolutely brilliant. If you can pick one up, save you a lot of time and effort. Right, there's one metal parts tray. There's two. So like I say, these have got rubber seals on, you see, so they bite down. You cannot tighten them up too much, but you can put too much pressure on and break them. Right, let's whip this little cover off it. See, that's just come off easy. There we go. And there's a little O-ring. Let's put that up there a minute. There's a little O-ring I was talking about. It sits on there and sits in this hole here. Sometimes it comes away with this and then drops back in, and it can go all over the place, can't it? You don't want to be... But can you see exactly where she's leaking from? That there. So I've made a schoolboy error there, because I've siliconed this on to the top, but I haven't put a bead round the base to silicone it to there. So I'm going to clean this oil up, get rid of all that nasty leakage, and I'm going to put a bead of black around there, and you'll see that, and we'll go from there. Look how clean it is. Right guys, catch you in a bit. Right guys, part 2 of this rocker cover oil leak fix. Do not scrimp with cleaning these seals up and going around this outside lip of the rocker, top of the head. I used some solvent cleaner, which is basically there to dissolve the oil. It was still kind of slippery afterwards, so then I used white spirit, and then it was still a bit ganky. So what I did then is good old-fashioned petrol. Stick your cloth under there, decent rag, turn the thing on, get a bit of petrol on there, and go round with your fingertip all the way around there a few times, especially considering this back part where it's lower than the top and liquid collects. You can see there's a puddle there, and again go around there many times, fingernails in those little grooves there. Those of you that know Hondas extremely well will see that this is not a genuine gasket. That's probably why it's failed again. That's why I'm going to bead it. The Honda ones have many fingers running along there, not just 2 lines. There's lots of fingers, so lots of little barriers for the oil to have to get through to get out. These are the non-genuine ones. As you can see, I've had to pretty much glue the thing on there initially, but I forgot to do the top bit. That's me. Anyway, right, before we go and put that back on with a nice bead of sealant, look what we got here. These are your rockers. These are your valve springs, and your valves are inside the engine. You've got exhaust and inlet. You've got 2 inlets and 1 exhaust on both cylinders. So we've got 3 tappets to adjust. Now I know that these are adjusted perfectly because I did these last time, but if you don't know how to adjust a tappet, you get your piston at top dead centre, so all the valves are closed, and I don't know if you can see the little gap there. See the little tiny little gap in there? We need a 10mm spanner. Ring spanner's good, and either a spanner that size, which is, I think it's 4mm, or a big pair of pliers to hold that tight, because you break the lock ring, the lock nut, and then you adjust in or out, which closes or lengthens that gap between the top of the hammer and the top of the valve stem. Okay, you use a feeler gauge like so. There's my feeler gauge, it's a Draper one. It's tricky to do this with one hand. Oh bugger. Right, rear cylinder, exhaust cylinder, exhaust valve even, should be between 20 and 20, no, between 20 and 25 thou. Well, that's your 25 thou. Can you see that on there? 0.025. You know, so that should slide in there quite happily. Now what I do, because it says between 20 and 25, I put it at sort of 22, because 25 is maximum, and you'll get quite a tappety engine because the gap's too big. It's okay when the engine warms up because that gap decreases, but everything expands, you see, and takes up that gap, hence the clearances. That's what they're for, they're very important. If you don't have clearances, when the engine warms up, the valves don't shut properly. So if they're not shut properly, you're going to get low compression and it won't start when it's hot and all the rest of it. So these are extremely important to get right. So exhaust valve, I set mine sort of 21, 22 thou, and inlet I set at 16 because it says between 15 and 18, so I set them at 16. So 16 thou. So to get that, let me just show you if you're not really familiar with these. There's a 15. No, it's not. Where's my 25 gone? This. Do you know what? I wish I had more hands than this. So there's your 25 thou. We don't need 25, it's too big, so we need to make up 22. So what would we do there? Well, you mathematicians out there, you would get a 12 and a 10. You see there? That's a 10, that's a 12. You put them together and there's your 22. Okay? And you basically slide that in, that gap in there, nice and level, and then you wind in this bolt with your pliers, not tight, just so you can drag the feeler gauges in and out nicely so it's just biting, and then whilst holding that extremely still, nip up this 10mm nut, and then that's set. Do your front ones to 18, sorry, 16, but you can do 18 if you want to. Your engine will just be slightly more tappety, so that's 0.16 thou. So I would go, what would I do for 16? I would do a 10, there's an 8, I would do a 10 and a 6. You see, there's the 6 and there's the 10. So I'd get those two together and do the front ones. Alright, so just as a side shoot, check your valve clearances, or your tappet clearances, whatever you want to call it, whilst you're doing your oil seal repair. Okay, I'm just going to stick a bead on there and we'll go from there. Right, rocker cover is now back on. I've reconnected that share pipe from the front cylinder to the rear cylinder. That's on. This is all ready for the airbox to go back onto there and back onto these two carb outlets. Now, I hear you cry, what about balancing my carburetors? How do I go about doing that? What do I need? Well, basically, you need to get yourself one of these. I got this off of eBay, fairly cheap. It's a petrol supply. So you literally pop the end of that pipe onto there. That's your pipe from your pump. Take that off of there, pop this pipe on, just hang that up somewhere, hang it on the side of your shed or whatever you want to do. Tie up it to your wing mirror, whatever you want to do. You can either, there's a strap there, you could just literally hang it over your handlebars like that. The vacuum will suck fuel in. So there's that. So you've got your fuel supply, so your engine will run, and then you will need to get yourself a pair of dials, a pair of vacuum meters. Simply comes like that in a kit. You have two brass pieces there and two pipes and some various little connectors. You don't need the little connectors. Basically stick one pipe on each of these holes, so you've got the two pipes coming off. You will need a Phillips screwdriver to get to, put the light on, I don't know if you can see that now. You see where the carburetor sits on the manifold? You undo that screw there and you literally wind in that into that hole, so that's fixed in. That's where the vacuum's created, on the venturi of the carburetor. That's where, not the venturi is actually the other side of the carburetor. So you wind that in there and you put your pipe on the end of this, going to 1 metre, so that's 1 metre sorted out. And on the other side, you don't need the other brass bit. This hose here to your air meter, your air valve, comes off of the, see it there? That's the other screw on the other carburetor, where the vacuum is created. So that's this pipe. So you take that pipe off of there and stick that straight onto the other meter. So your meters will be about here somewhere. Right, so we've got that so far. If you're not sure about that, again, just rewind it and go over it again. Now all you need is a Phillips screwdriver, because this is the beastie you adjust your balance with, and there is the balance screw there. It basically controls the butterflies. So you start your bike up, you check your meters, have it on tick over, adjust that so the meters are about the same, rev it up to sort of 3,000, 3,500 revs, check the meters are the same, if not just adjust very slightly, and when you're happy with that the meters are both at the same reading, then your carburetors are balanced. It sounds complicated, that's as simple as it gets. Okay, so like I say, I got these off of eBay, about 28 quid, something like that. You can mount it on a board or whatever you want to do with it. And there you go. Like I say, when the vacuum is created, these needles will both go around, and if they're out of balance, one will go around more than the other one, etc. So you don't adjust one carburetor, you adjust the mixing screw, which differentiates between the two, so that balances them up. Okay, is that clear? I hope it is. It's not too difficult, is it? Like I say, adjusting screw is there. It's quite easy to get to. Right, I'm happy with my sealant. What I did is I took the whole gasket off, because my philosophy is that if there was a break anywhere in the seal around the part, the gasket that was glued to the rock cover, the oil would have got out of there. So just about do the job properly. It takes just as long, doesn't it? So I'm happy with that. That's all siliconed in. I'm going to let that go off for a few hours before I start the bike, obviously. There we go. So, alright guys, that's rocker cover oil leak sorted, and hopefully you have a bit of better knowledge now about balancing your carburetors. Right, I'm going to stick them back together and wait for a couple of hours and then go for a spin. Alright guys, thanks for looking. Hi Deauville Diary guys, and bimblers and shed dwellers and everybody else in between. I'm often asked about the fuel pump. What happens if my fuel pump packs up? Well, there's a little screw on the back of there, and if you undo the screw, this plastic cap comes off and reveals the points, the contact sets inside. You can buy a contact set kits off of eBay. They're about £19 something or other, and you can pop them straight back in. You will need to cut a cable and do a bit of soldering. It's only one cable, so it's not difficult. There are probably videos out there about doing it. I've never done it personally. This, by the way, is a Chinese pump. Don't listen to rumours. There's nothing wrong with the things. So if you imagine you've got your tank here, tank pops onto there. There's your filter, filtering the fuel going into the pump, and then it goes out of the pump all the way up and supplies the carburetors via that T-piece there. Okay, so that's how the carburetors get equal amounts of fuel. Right, what happens if your pump packs up and you're out and about in the middle of nowhere? Well, the only tool you need to take in your back pocket is a pair of pliers. Simply undo that clip there, okay, and pull the filter off. So this is still on the tank, don't forget. So you undo that clip there. You're going to get a bit of spillage, so make sure you have a rag. You take your pipe off of the outlet side of the pump, and you basically put that back on the end of there. So your fuel comes in and goes straight out, misses the fuel pump completely, and goes into your carburetors. Your bike will run absolutely perfectly without this fuel pump. The only reason for this fuel pump really is when it gets down to reserve, there's not a lot of weight in the tank to push the fuel through, and there's not a lot of enough suck really for it to suck generally through there. So that's what the pump does. It kind of aids all the rest of it, and it ticks away quite nicely when it's working. So there you go. If you want to bypass your fuel pump quickly, undo that clip there, take the fuel filter out and stick it on the end of that pipe there. You're going to have to bend it up round. Obviously you don't want any kinks in it because that will restrict the fuel flow as well. Alright, so that's another little thing. Okay, and I will do a video next about your radiator fan. Okay guys, thanks for watching. Good day, Deauville diary guys and shed dwellers and bimblers all alike. This is me army Deauville. I'm sure you're quite up au fait with it so far. Now, what happens when your bike starts overheating and you don't think your fan's working? Well, I've just popped my ignition on. It's simple. This is so simple. Put your ignition on. Don't start the bike, obviously. You simply take off the wire. That's the rad stat. That sends a signal to your fan when it gets too hot to kick your fan in. And there's your fan in there. Okay. So all I'm going to do is touch this to an earth point on the bike. There's an earth point there, and listen to the fan kick in. Okay, simple as that. You know your fan's working perfectly well. Okay, check that the blades are rotating first and there's no bits of grit or gravel. Try saying that after a few beers. There's nothing obstructing them blades rotating. Otherwise, if there is and it's jammed and you take this off and you touch it to earth, chances are you're going to blow your fuse in your fuse box, which is right there. Okay, so there we go. That's a quick test for your stat. There you go. There is a light on your dashboard. There's not one on mine because it's a different dash. There is a little red light that comes on if your bike is overheating. If it's not your stat switch, it could be the sensor, which is, where is it? It's under here somewhere. There it is, right down in there. It sits in this water filler housing, your cooling system filler housing, and it's just down in there. There's a little cable going onto it. That sends the temperature signal to your dashboard and makes the light go on and off. Alright, so it could be that. Other thing is water pump, which is there. There's your water pump. If that's broken in any way, you'll certainly hear the noise of it because it will grind and make a hell of a noise. So there you go. Check your fan quickly. Ignition on. Pull the cable off. Touch it to earth. Job done. Your fan should kick in. Alright guys, I hope that was helpful. Okay. Right. I've still not put it back together yet from the last video. Alright guys, take it easy. Thanks for watching. Back again. One last thing before you put your airbox back on, which is actually quite awkward because you've got to get the rubber seal around that carb and the rubber seal around that carb. It takes a bit of jiggery pokery, but it will pop in, and then you can do your two screws up, one this side on the carb, one on that side. Make sure your pipe's in on the bottom of that carburetor, on the bottom of the airbox there, and again this pipe here coming from the air valve. Right, before you do all that, get yourself a can. WD, something like this, AC90, ACF50 people swear by. It's too expensive for me, I can't afford that kind of stuff. And liberally coat your carburetors because you will get, there is salt in there, it will corrode all this stuff in no time. Give everything a darn good clean. Now pop some tissue or something in the carburetor holes before you start. You don't want crap going in there. But yeah, I can't stress that enough. With your fairings off, you want to do everything all at once. Even do your plugs. Change your 4 plugs. Okay, because these are a bugger to get to. This one in the front left. Okay, alright guys. Right, I've bored you to death enough. Keep it sunny side up. Take care.